Chapter 40. Wings in the Night. The final echo of the horns still vibrated through the stone when the light of the sky seemed to fracture. A murmur rippled through the dwarves gathered in the stands, tight, restrained, before collapsing into absolute silence as shadows began to move across the arena. The creatures descended like a plague that had been waiting for the precise signal to unleash its fury. Durin Hramson was the first to react. "Arms! Defend the city!" his voice thundered, heavy with authority and wrath. Dwarven archers stationed along the upper tiers drew their bows in a single, practiced motion. A rain of arrows surged skyward, humming like swarms of enraged insects. Several found their marks. Black shapes tumbled down, wings folding grotesquely as they fell like stones. Others veered aside with piercing shrieks that froze the blood. From the outer walls came new war horns, mingled with the clash of dwarven steel-striking creatures attacking other quarters of the city. Alden felt his pulse accelerate like a drumbeat. He gripped his short sword in one hand and Arundel in the other. The air thickened around him, heavy with the cold scent of metal and an electricity that seemed to emanate from the mark on his chest. The first creature struck the ground with bone-shaking violence. It advanced out of the gloom, revealing a silhouette even more imposing than expected. A long, muscular tail lashed behind it, ending in a bony spike that gleamed with a wet sheen, as if it could pierce armor and flesh alike. Dark veins pulsed beneath its black skin along arms and legs, marking an irregular, almost unnatural rhythm. When it raised its head, its yellow eyes, bright as embers sunk in oil, locked onto them with a cold, predatory intelligence that made the skin crawl. Its folded wings trembled faintly, releasing a low whisper that promised the power coiled within the creature. A Varog, and behind it, many more. The arena erupted into absolute chaos. Sarah hurled herself into the fray first. Her twin curved blades flashed beneath the torches as she wove among the creatures with a speed that seemed to defy gravity itself. Her blonde braids spun with each turn. Her feet barely brushed the sand. A precise thrust to the flank, a sharp pivot, an upward slash. The first creature fell before it could even snarl. The second lunged from the side, but Sarah ducked with a fluidity that felt elven in its purest essence, severing the tendons of one leg and finishing it with a clean strike to the chest. A third dove from above with claws extended. Sarah met it with a perfect crossing of blades that carved a deep furrow across its torso before she sprang away. Kyle reached her side just as another creature hit the ground, his long sword sweeping in a wide arc that forced the Varog back. He fought with feral, almost instinctive agility, complementing Sarah's movements without a word. Where she advanced, he guarded a flank. Where he pressed, she opened space for the killing blow. Together, they were lethal. "Kale, look out!" Lyanna cried. A shadow plunged downward, but ether streaked from the sky, his dive a sharpened flash. The hawk struck the Varog in the face, deflecting its attack at the last instant. The creature shrieked, its sound harsh and distorted. Kale seized the opening. His blade drove into the monster's neck with a dull, final thud that snuffed out the scream. Lyanna stepped forward, the relic of Velis glowing along her left arm. The wind began to coil around her, lifting dust and shards of stone. When she extended her hand, a cutting gust shot forth, slamming into a Varog poised to descend upon a group of dwarven artisans. The creature spun in midair, hurled back as if it had struck an invisible wall. "Eth, with me!" she commanded. The hawk obeyed, slicing through the air at her side. Luthera burst from the northern entrance of the Colosseum, a streak of silver amid shadow. The she-wolf lunged at a Varog that had come too close, her jaws clamping onto its thigh with a crunch of breaking bone. The Varog roared and tried to strike her, but Lyanna raised another gust that knocked the blow aside entirely. Meanwhile, Dren moved through the arena's shadows. His daggers flashed whenever he closed on a creature, driving between plates of hardened hide. He was not strong, but he was fast, fast as a whisper. He slid beneath outstretched arms, slashing tendons and evading blows that would have split a man in two. "Same as always," he grumbled as another creature fell, "nearly killing myself so no one has to say thanks." Alden charged into the fight with both blades. The first Varog he met slashed downward, a blow that could have cleaved a horse in half. Alden crossed his swords and took the impact, feeling his arms nearly give under the creature's brutal strength. The monster roared. Alden shoved with everything he had, forcing it back. Arundel traced a streak of red light as it cut the air, opening a deep wound across the creature's torso. The Varog collapsed, but another was already dropping from above. "Alden!" Cal shouted. Alden ducked just in time. A creature swept over him, its claws raking his back and shredding his cloak into ribbons. He rolled, came up, and hurled his short sword as though it were part of his own arm. The weapon flew straight and true, spinning end over end before burying itself in the flank of a creature diving toward King Durin. The beast hit the ground, thrashing. Durin finished it with a single hammer blow, crushing it like clay. The king looked up and met Alden's gaze. A silent gesture. Acknowledgement. There was no time for more. Another creature dropped from the sky and seized Alden by the shoulders with its lower claws. His feet left the ground. The air was ripped from his chest. He struggled, but the talons tightened like red-hot iron pincers. "Alden!" Lyanna cried. Before the creature could lift him higher, a hammer came spinning in from the right. It smashed into the Varog's side with a dry, thunderous crack, hurling it to the ground. Alden fell to his knees, gasping. Durin strode forward, retrieved his hammer, and gave Alden the same look Alden had given him moments before. Alden nodded in return. A gesture for a gesture. The battle allowed them no breath. More Varogs poured down into the arena, tearing stones from the ground with their claws. One dove straight for Durin. The dwarf had been left weaponless after the duel, but a royal aide, the same one who carried the arsenal keys, hurled an axe toward him, shouting, "Durin, catch!" The axe cut through the air. Durin snatched it one-handed. "Ah, now that's better," he bellowed. When the Varog struck, Durin spun and unleashed an upward blow that sheared off one of its wings. The creature crashed down, roaring. Durin did not hesitate. He raised the axe again and drove it into the monster's skull. "See that, old Thuran?" he panted. "Your son is forging his own legend." Grumar appeared at his side, smashing his axe against Durin's in a warrior's salute. "That's the way, half-blood!" he roared before charging another foe. Behind a fallen column, Borin trembled. "Oracle, this way!" he whispered desperately. Selenia, unmoved amid the chaos, inclined her head and followed him. Borin was no warrior, never had been, but he possessed a measure of sense. He knew when to run, and protecting the Oracle was all he could offer in that battle. Alden was already fighting his third enemy. His heart hammered against the mark, as though the energy within him were seeking release. Arundel flared with every strike, reacting to the creature's presence. Alden could not afford to dwell on it. A claw grazed his cheek. Warm blood trickled down. Alden spun and drove Arundel into the creature's torso. A red glow spread through the wound, consuming the Varog from within and leaving it lifeless before it hit the ground. Kyle reached his side, caked in dust and sweat. "This is worse than the blasted Virkath in the pass," he spat. "Much worse," Alden replied. Lyanna landed a few paces away, borne by a whirlwind of her own making. Her cloak snapped as if alive. Ether wheeled above, tearing at eyes and wings. Luthara planted herself before Lyanna, snarling, ready to spring at anything that came too close. The battle splintered into dozens of smaller duels. Dwarves against Varogs, wind against claws, steel against fangs. The arena, once a place of ritual and honor, had become a blood-soaked stage where countless fates were decided with every second. Alden felt fatigue seep into his arms. The mark burned hotter than ever. The primordial fire wanted out. He could feel it, like a caged beast battering from within. But not yet. Not while he could still fight on his own strength. Durin stumbled a short distance away as one of the largest creatures hurled itself at the king with ferocious force. The hammer bit into the Varog's jaw, but the creature seized it with its claws and tried to wrench it free. "Your Majesty!" Alden shouted. Without thinking, he surged forward. Two creatures dropped into his path, but Sarah and Kale intercepted them, clearing his way. Durin roared as he struggled. When his leg buckled, Alden leapt, driving Arundel into the monster's flank. A burst of red light hurled the creature back, smashing it to the ground. Durin gasped, regained his footing, and raised his hammer. "I'm starting to like you, boy," he growled. Alden smiled despite the chaos. Then a deep, viscous sound rolled across the upper tiers of the Colosseum. Not a horn, not a shout, the beating of colossal wings. A shadow fell across the arena, drawing every gaze upward. Even the Varog still fighting seemed to react as the presence landed. A massive creature dropped before Alden, Durin, and Doran, kicking up a cloud of dust that darkened the sky for a moment. It stood over 2 meters tall, perhaps more than 3. Its black skin looked like living rock. Its claws, on hands and feet alike, were edges sharp enough to cleave steel. Fangs protruded from retracted lips. Its yellow eyes gleamed with perfect, cold, indifferent intelligence. 5 Varogs landed around it. More descended behind them, a dozen in all facing the same direction. The silence after the colossal creature's landing was almost unnatural. No wind, no voices, only hearts pounding in uneven, frantic rhythm, as if the arena itself were holding its breath. Alden felt the mark blaze like a sun trapped beneath his skin. Each heartbeat sent a surge of heat through him, awakening something he could not name but that now demanded release. Arundel vibrated in his hand, resonating with that inner force, as if the sword itself recognized the enemy, as if it knew what must come. Durin stepped forward, his massive hammer resting on the ground. "This thing," he spat, never taking his eyes off the giant creature, "is no ordinary Varog." Doran moved to his side, the newly claimed axe still slick with dark blood. Sweat streamed down his brow, but his expression was firm, defiant. "Then let it come," he growled. "Let's see if it's as hard as it looks." The creature took a step. Each movement raised dust. Each breath sounded like a sleeping volcano's exhale. Its folded wings were as broad as those of a young dragon. Long fingers ended in curved blades that glinted with a sickly light. The accompanying Varogs lined up, upright, disciplined, like soldiers answering a commander's call. Alden slowly raised Arundel. He felt the primordial fire course through him, lending strength but demanding something in return. He remembered the first time he had felt it, and the second, how it had consumed him, how it had left him collapsed and empty. But now was different. He was stronger now, and he knew he must not fear it. He knew he must accept it. The giant creature crouched and unleashed a roar that made the Colosseum's pillars tremble. The sound was so deep that dwarves in the stands instinctively ducked, covering their ears. Ether screamed overhead, wheeling frantically as he searched for the perfect angle. Luthera bared her fangs, hackles raised, ready to spring. Alden did not move. "Alden!" Lyanna's voice reached him, distant. Kyle and Sarah watched from a few paces back, chests heaving, but Alden barely heard them. The mark's pulse was a drum beating a rhythm not of this world. The air grew warm, vibrating with every breath. The giant creature attacked. It moved with terrifying speed for its size, a mass of muscle, fury, and claws hurling itself at Alden, Durin, and Doran like a bolt of black lightning. The other Varogs struck at once, converging from multiple angles in a perfect ambush. Durin raised his hammer and met the first Varog head-on. The impact drove him back 2 steps, but he did not fall. Roaring, he struck back, bones cracking as the enemy was flung aside. Doran spun and hacked the leg from a creature rushing his flank, sending it crashing down. He had no time to finish it. Another plunged from above. He barely lifted his axe in time. Even so, he was driven backward, rolling across the sand. Alden ran to him, cutting down a Varog that tried to spear him from the side. Arundel flared red-hot before plunging into the monster's chest. It burst apart in dark blood and ash, as though the sword's fire purged all it touched. But the true threat still stood. The giant creature raised its claw and brought it down on Alden. The blow would have split a horse in 2, but Alden rolled aside and struck with Arundel. The blade scored a glowing line across the monster's hide, forcing it back a few steps at most. Then something changed. The creature's eyes locked onto Alden, and Alden felt something answer within him, as if an unseen gaze slid along his spine. The mark throbbed. The world narrowed to a perfect circle. Himself, the sword, the creature. Nothing else. A lesser Varog leapt for Alden's back, but Sarah appeared like lightning, slicing off its wing and bearing a blade in its throat. Lyanna unleashed a gust that scattered two creatures trying to encircle them. Aether dove and tore at another's face, while Luthera sprang, sinking her fangs into a throat and shaking violently. Still, there were too many, and the giant advanced again, slow, devastating steps. Its yellow eyes fixed on Alden as if it recognized him, as if it knew exactly who he was, as if it sought him alone. Durin shouted, stepping between them. "Back, boy! This one is mine!" The creature slashed. Its claw met the king's hammer with a crash that shook the arena. Durin answered with a crushing downward blow that would have flattened any other foe, but the beast caught it with its forearm, resisting, pushing. Its strength was monstrous, unnatural. Durin bared his teeth, muscles straining. Then another creature leapt for him from behind. Sarah did not hesitate. Her hand moved without thought. She hurled one of her curved swords with unmatched force and precision. The weapon streaked through the air like a silver bolt and buried itself in the Varog's chest before it could reach the king. The creature hit the ground, lifeless. Durin turned and looked at her. A silent thanks. A shared acknowledgement between warriors of races usually distant. But the battle did not relent. The giant roared again, rallying the remaining Varogs. They no longer attacked in disarray. They no longer fell from the sky without order. Now they advanced with their leader at the fore, a living wall of black, pressing toward Alden, Durin, and Doran as the rest of the Colosseum fought for survival. Alden rose slowly. The fire in his chest was no longer heat. It was pressure, necessity, a wordless command that said, "Now." Durin lifted his hammer. Doran raised his axe. Alden raised Arundel. The air changed, heavier, warmer. The red light along the blade intensified until it sheathed the sword completely. Alden's eyes turned bright amber, glowing like freshly lit embers. The giant spread its arms, wings unfurling, ready for the final blow. Alden exhaled, and the world exploded, not with sound, with light. Arundel carved the air in a perfect arc. A line of pure red fire tore from the blade, like a scar ripped from the heart of a volcano. The flame passed straight through the giant creature, then through the one behind it, and the next, and the next. Bodies were cleaved by that incandescent line. Fire pierced them, purified them, shattered bone, flesh, and shadow alike. The creatures did not even scream. They simply fell. The leader was the last to hit the ground. Its yellow eyes went dark without a sound. The silence that followed was almost sacred. The few remaining Varogs, seeing their leader fall, beat their wings and fled in all directions, desperate to escape the fire that had reduced their kin to ash. Alden stood at the center of the arena, sword still raised. The red light faded slowly, dying like an ember, yielding at last to the wind. His amber eyes returned to their normal hue. The heat left him. Fatigue crashed over him like a wave. But he did not fall, not this time. His legs trembled, his breathing was heavy, yet he remained standing, the blade lowering slowly to his side. A warrior, a bearer of fire, an heir to the balance between light and shadow. All eyes were on him. Kyle, sweat-soaked, wounded, smiled in disbelief. Lyanna watched him with eyes full of wonder and something deeper. Sarah stood as stoic as ever, gaze fixed on Alden. Doran was motionless, axe still raised. Grumar breathed heavily, unable to look away. And Durin looked at him as though witnessing the birth of a legend. The icy mountain winds swept through again, carrying the scent of battle. Alden closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He did not fall. He stood firm, as he would from this day forward. High above Tharzul, the night folded its wings once more, unaware that something had awakened. Something ancient, something its own, and something Galathor would feel, without doubt, wherever he might be.